This video is about targeting. And what I mean by targeting is it doesn't do you any good. Somebody is trying to attack you to strike at something that's not going to substantially affect his continuing to attack you or affect his balance or cause some pain that'll make him stop. So what we're going to look at, and there's a chart also in the manual that you can follow, but I'm going to go through some of the primary and secondary but okay targets that you want to focus on if you are trying to deal with an attack. So we're going to start with the front, we're going to look at the side, and we're going to look at the back. And of course I'm going to use Bob, but the fact is that there are some limitations because Bob doesn't have arms and doesn't have legs, so we'll have to kind of improvise there. So in the front, looking at the head, unless the person has hair, there's really nothing to target up here. If he has hair, of course, you can grab that where the head goes, the body follows, so you can jerk that around, sort of control the person. But other than that, the head is pretty hard, and you're going to hurt yourself if you hit somebody in the head. I know this through a lot of experience, so you don't want to waste your punches or strikes on this. The other exception, a couple of exceptions, would be targeting the forehead if you using your hand and you're articulating the neck back like that in order to upset his balance. But striking at the head is going to end up hurting you. If you have something like a Kubotan, you can strike at the forehead, open up a cut, cause bleeding, and that's not going to stop somebody in their tracks, but blood in the eyes can slow them down, certainly. But other than that, we're not going to be trying to hit anywhere on the head. It's not going to have much of an impact on him. It'll have more of an impact on you. The eyes are primary targets. In the video on dirty fighting or atypical defensive moves, we talk a lot about some things you can do in the eyes. Of course, if you have a Kubotan or tactical flashlight, you can always go for the eyes. Boom. They're going to be affected no matter what you do, even if it's just a little flick. It'll stop somebody temporarily. It could stop them completely. But keep in mind that we all have kind of a natural flinch response. If somebody goes for our eyes, that's what we protect the most. So even though they're primary targets, they may not be the easiest thing to hit. It takes a little practice, and if you don't have a dummy like this, you can draw a picture of a face, put it up at about face height somewhere, and then just practice striking that. You can also gouge. Nose is a good target, not a primary one, because some people can continue to fight after they have been struck in the nose, even after they've had their nose broken. I've seen two instances where the fight stopped when somebody got their nose smashed and broken. In one case, it was a small guy against a pretty big guy. The big guy got his nose broken, but it wasn't just broken. I mean, it was shattered, and blood was streaming out, not just dripping out, and he had to go to the emergency room. So it's plausible that if you strike the nose hard enough that you can stop a fight. Chances are, though, it'll just kind of slow somebody down rather than stop it. Avoid the mouth because of the teeth. It can end up hurting you more than hurt him. Even if you knock out a couple of his teeth, they might become embedded in your hand. However, the lips, and I'll just let you watch the video on atypical defensive moves. There's a move called the fish hook where you actually use the cheek, but other than that, avoid the mouth. The chin, a good striking point for a hammer strike. Articulate the head by coming up like this with a palm. And it's also a major point that transfers shock to the brain, so you can concuss somebody by hitting them hard in the chin. Generally speaking, you want that to be kind of an upward motion, whether it be a boxing uppercut or a palm strike. You can also hit straight on, and it won't have the same effect, but it'll have an effect. So chin's a good place. Throat is another primary target. The throat is made up mostly of cartilage, and a hard strike to the throat can actually kill somebody. In most cases, you wouldn't be striking that hard, but you can use a forearm to the throat. You can make a C and strike like that. If you can get a fist in there, you can do that. Or you can use a flashlight, boom, Kubotan, bam. Anything like that's going to have an impact on the throat. Just keep in mind, potentially lethal. Moving down below the throat, right below the throat, there's a little hole there. It's called the clavicle notch. And if you can get a finger in there, get a Kubotan in there, stick it in there, and just really press, it gets a gag reflex going. It's particularly good if somebody's on top of you and you reach up. The chest is pretty much all muscle or fat. A couple of exceptions. One is right around the chest area, just above it, is the clavicle or the collarbone. You're going to be hard pressed to damage that with your fists. But if you have, again, a flashlight, wham. Kubotan, wham. You could potentially crack it. You certainly hurt it. It would hurt like crazy. So that's a good target. Anywhere in the pectoralis region, not so good. But right down the middle, the sternum. And it's fairly exposed, even if somebody has a lot of fat or muscle. It's still fairly close to the surface. So a good thing to use would be, again, a flashlight, a Kubotan, boom, on that sternum. Elbow strike to the sternum can also have a kind of a shocking effect. Right below the sternum, right where the rib cage meets, each side meets there, is a little tiny target called the solar plexus, and it's a direct path to the diaphragm. And what happens when it gets hit, bam, is the diaphragm spasms, and the diaphragm is what presses against your lungs to help you breathe. And it feels, if you've ever been hit there, you know what it feels like. It feels like you absolutely can't catch a breath. And so that could stop somebody in their tracks. The downside is it's a very, very small target. So you're not always going to be able to reach it. But a strike of some kind, an elbow, knee strike, any of that might affect the diaphragm. Below that is the six-pack, or in some guys' cases, a keg, and you're not going to do much by hitting them there. Potentially you could knock the wind out of somebody, but when somebody, generally speaking, people tighten up, and a lot of people can take a lot of hits to the stomach without much effect. Below that, if you think about the groin as a V, where the legs connect to the hips, it kind of creates a V. It's called the groin line, in fact. Anywhere around there, it's a pivot point, and if you can hit that, a lot of times what it does is it forces somebody forward, or kicking it, boom, forcing somebody forward like that. The groin is a good target. It's not always the best target. People, generally men, are affected pretty almost universally by getting hit or kicked in the groin, but different people react differently. Some people can endure a lot of pain. Some people may be chemically altered, booze or drugs, and they may not feel the pain until maybe later. It's not a guaranteed showstopper, but it's a good target for a kick, good target for a knee, or if somebody's behind you, hammer strike there, or grab and twist. Okay. Moving on down, Bob doesn't have any legs. I do. So looking at my legs, my knees are good targets. They're not great targets from the front, especially if somebody has their knees bent. If you can kick hard enough that you force the knee backwards and hyperextend it, you can cause some damage and maybe make the guy go down. But watch some MMA matches and see how many kicks people take to the front of the knees, and quite frankly, They can take a lot. You know, a devastating kick could blow that knee out, but generally speaking, people can take a lot of abuse to the knees. But again, if you can make that knee lock by kicking through, kind of hitting it and continuing to push it, and hyperextending it, then you can do some damage. The shins are good targets just for stunning somebody, a good swift kick to the shin, and then the feet to stomp. Boom. And generally speaking, if somebody's behind you, it's a good move to stomp on the foot. So those are some of the front targets. Turning sideways. So again, we've got that bowling ball of a head. We don't want to mess with this part. But right in front of the ear is the temple. And that's a knockout point. You can knock somebody silly hitting them there in the temple. You magnify it with a flashlight or Kubotan, it's going to be awful. And potentially fatal. I got a bad concussion once getting a knee in the temple, and I didn't go unconscious, but I didn't know where I was. I didn't know why I was there, wherever it was, and the whole world was spinning like this. So you can incapacitate somebody even if you don't knock them unconscious. The ear, any kind of slap on the ear, any kind of grabbing the ear, good target. Point of the jaw here or anywhere along the jaw line, a good hard strike can render somebody unconscious. Also, if you're back here and you hit like with a palm strike here at that point of the jaw, you could dislocate the jaw. But we're thinking mainly of knockouts. Along the neck, it's kind of a target-rich environment, so to speak. There's a bundle of nerves called the brachial plexus that run through there. A hard strike there can create a flash knockout where just kind of somebody just boop, falls over. Carotid arteries are running like this, and you hit a carotid artery, it'll stop the blood flow just for a second, enough to maybe make somebody get a little goofy or go unconscious. And then there's a nerve called the vagus nerve that runs to the heart, and it can affect the heart, so you could get somebody to pass out by hitting that vagus nerve, kind of striking it, and it makes the heart kind of skip a beat or something, and so there's a lot of things that can be affected there in the neck. Shoulders, really not much there. Shoulder joint, if you can grab an arm and pull back on the shoulder joint, you could affect that. There's a lot of locks, but we won't go into locks here. Down below, and of course you got the arms, the elbow joint that you can, if you could get an arm straight and pop it, you can dislocate it. Fingers can be broken. And again, a lot of joints. There are joint locks from multiple disciplines like jiu-jitsu or hapkido that if you have the time to learn them, they're really effective for restraint. But this is not a class about restraint. This is a class about getting home alive. Below that are the ribs. Ribs are pretty vulnerable. You get hit in the ribs, you feel it. Not that hard to break a rib, so those are good points to hit. Right below the floating ribs, the liver, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the biggest organ of the body. It kind of, one side of it kind of peeps out below those floating ribs. And a good hard strike to the liver can just take somebody out of the picture. The pain is incredible. They just lose function in their legs, and people go down. If you want to check it out, just look up liver shots in boxing. There's a whole bunch of compilations on YouTube of people getting hit in the liver. So it's on the right side, which means you would have to probably hit it with your left hand. If you're facing the person, it would be boom or boom. If you get to the side, you might be able to use the other hand. But a knee strike, if you can bend the person over and knee strike that, it's a very effective place to hit somebody. Hips, from the side, we're not really going to look at much on the hips, but if you think about the knee, anytime you kick a knee from either the inside out or the outside in, you're probably going to do some damage. I had to stop teaching one self-defense class that I taught for 11 years at adult school because one of the students, a woman, I was in the full contact suit, and she got a really nasty kick in on me sideways, and it just took out my knee. Months of therapy and surgery and then therapy afterwards, and my knee's never been the same. So if you hit somebody, kick somebody sideways, that's going to have an impact, a lot more than kicking them from the front. Side of the leg isn't as painful as the front of the shin, but what you can do is kind of hit halfway and scrape down and kind of at an angle hit that ankle. And again, it's just painful. You're probably not going to do a lot of damage, but it's going to stop somebody temporarily. Okay, looking at the back, we got that bowling ball. You hit that, you're going to be sorry. But right where the bowling ball meets the spine, that's a very vulnerable area. A forearm strike, a hammer strike, elbow strike, or if you have the guy bent over, boom, like that. It is potentially fatal. My guess would be you'd have to be a very hard strike to do that, but just know that that's another potentially fatal strike. But you can render somebody unconscious. You can certainly mess them up just by hitting back here, boom. But you don't want to go above this. That's the skull. Below that, the spine is fairly protected. The only thing that you're going to do with the spine is if you manage to get a really hard elbow strike in there, boom, that could cause somebody to spasm a little bit. Whole bunch of strong muscles back here. We're not going to even think about doing anything there. I pop somebody there, it's not going to do much to them. However, down belt line, right about the belt line, on each side are the kidneys. And a knee strike, boom, a hammer strike, boom, elbow strike, boom, into the kidneys can take somebody out. I saw a guy get hit in the kidney with a baton one time, and what was amazing was just how fast he went down and was completely powerless. The pain is pretty intense. The booty, not much there except muscle or fat or both. And the only other two things to think about are the backs of the legs. If you kick out, if I can grab up here and kick here, the backs of the legs, I'm not going to damage the knee probably too much. It's going to bend it though. And then I pull here as I push there, push, and this guy is going to go down. So here I can kick like this, I could grab one side and kick like this. Either way is going to send him flying down to the ground. And then the only other thing from the back is the Achilles tendon. Again, a kind of a scraping kick at an angle, and you can really hurt that and affect the guy. So what we're talking about are a handful of techniques that will stop somebody in their tracks, or a handful of targets that if you hit them right will stop somebody in their tracks. And then a majority of these targets will probably slow somebody down or stop them for a minute, giving you a chance to either follow up with something or giving you a chance to escape. So keep in mind, look at the chart, vulnerable targets. Keep in mind that if you don't go for a vulnerable target, you're wasting your energy. Every time you try punching somebody and you miss, you've expended energy, and if you keep doing that, you'll be exhausted without having affected this guy. Okay, so check that out in the manual. Look at the little chart, and if you want to practice, again, you don't have a dummy like this, just get a piece of paper, draw a face on it, put it up there, start kind of striking. Some butcher paper, draw a body, and start focusing on striking those those parts that we've listed in here. All right, until the next video.